In this video, we will talk about the exploration and colonization of the Americas. The exploration and colonization of the Americas was a monumental chapter in world history, one that reshaped entire continents, cultures, and civilizations. Beginning in the late 15th century, European powers set out to explore and claim vast territories across North and South America. This era of discovery was driven by a combination of economic ambitions, national rivalries, and a desire to spread Christianity. Over time, the Americas became a focal point of European colonization, leading to the exchange of goods and cultures, and, tragically, the displacement and destruction of indigenous peoples. This video will explore key events, motivations, and consequences of this era. Early European exploration. European explorers, like the Portuguese and Spanish, sought new trade routes to Asia, avoiding the Ottoman-controlled overland paths. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed under Spain, aiming for Asia but reached the Caribbean instead, starting European exploration in the Americas. Amerigo Vespucci later identified these lands as a new continent, leading to the naming of the Americas. Spanish conquests in the Americas. Following Columbus, Spain quickly established itself as a dominant force in the Americas. Spanish conquistadors explored and conquered large parts of the continent, often using brutal force against indigenous populations. Two of the most notable conquests were those of the Aztec Empire in present-day Mexico and the Inca Empire in South America. Hernán Cortés and the Aztecs. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived in Mexico and encountered the powerful Aztec Empire, ruled by Montezuma II. With superior weaponry, horses, and support from local tribes who resented Aztec rule, Cortés was able to capture the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan in 1521, marking the fall of the empire. Francisco Pizarro and the Incas. A few years later, in 1532, Francisco Pizarro led an expedition to Peru, where he encountered the Inca Empire, weakened by internal conflict. Pizarro captured the Inca ruler Atahualpa and demanded a large ransom, which the Incas paid, but he still executed Atahualpa. By 1533, Pizarro had taken control of the Inca capital, Cuzco. These conquests were driven by Spain's desire for wealth, particularly gold and silver, and were often justified by the aim of converting indigenous peoples to Christianity. The Spanish Empire established a vast colonial network in the Americas, including present-day Mexico, Central America, much of South America, and the Caribbean. The Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange was a massive transfer of goods, crops, animals, and diseases between the Old World and the New World. New World crops like corn and potatoes transformed European diets, while Old World crops like wheat were introduced to the Americas. Europeans brought animals such as horses and cattle to the Americas, changing Native American lifestyles. Sadly, the exchange also included diseases like smallpox, which devastated indigenous populations due to their lack of immunity. French, Dutch, and English colonization. While Spain was the first European power to establish colonies in the Americas, other nations soon followed suit, eager to gain their share of the wealth and resources that the New World offered. France. The French focused on exploring and settling parts of North America. Jacques Cartier explored the St. Lawrence River in the 1530s, laying the foundation for French claims in Canada. In 1608, Amul de Champlain founded Quebec, which became the capital of New France. Unlike the Spanish, the French were more interested in trade, particularly the fur trade, and established good relations with many Native American tribes. The Netherlands. The Dutch also established colonies in the New World, most notably New Netherland in what is now New York. In 1609, English explorer Henry Hudson, working for the Dutch, sailed up the river that now bears his name, leading to the establishment of a Dutch trading post at New Amsterdam, which later became New York City. England. The English initially lagged behind in colonization efforts, but by the early 17th century, they began establishing settlements along the eastern coast of North America. In 1607, Jamestown in Virginia became the first permanent English colony. By the 1620s, the Pilgrims and Puritans established settlements in New England, seeking religious freedom. Over the next century, English colonies expanded along the Atlantic coast and became the most populous and economically diverse colonies in the New World. Impact on indigenous peoples. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas had a catastrophic effect on indigenous populations. In addition to the devastating impact of disease, European colonization brought about displacement, violence, and exploitation. Loss of land. European settlers often took over large tracts of land, forcing indigenous people off their ancestral territories. In some regions, native populations were enslaved or forced to work in harsh conditions, such as in the Spanish encomienda system. Cultural destruction. Colonization also led to the suppression of indigenous cultures, languages, and religions. European missionaries sought to convert indigenous people to Christianity, often using forceful methods. Resistance and adaptation. Despite these challenges, indigenous peoples did not passively accept European colonization. Many groups resisted through warfare and negotiations, while others adapted to the changing world by incorporating new technologies and ideas from Europeans. The Atlantic slave trade. The colonization of the Americas also played a central role in the rise of the Atlantic slave trade. As European settlers established plantations in the Caribbean, Brazil, and the American South, they turned to enslaved African labor to work the sugar, tobacco, and cotton fields. Over the course of more than 3 centuries, millions of Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic in horrific conditions to labor in the Americas. The transatlantic slave trade had profound social and economic consequences for both the Americas and Africa. African societies were disrupted by the loss of millions of people, while the economies of European colonial powers and their American colonies were enriched by the profits from slavery. Independence movements in the Americas. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, many of the European colonies in the Americas began to seek independence. A combination of Enlightenment ideals, economic grievances, and local resistance to European rule fueled these movements. The United States. The first major successful independence movement in the Americas was the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. In which the 13 British colonies along the eastern seaboard of North America won their independence and formed the United States of America. Latin America. Inspired by the American and French revolutions, Latin American colonies also sought independence. In the early 19th century, leaders such as Simón Bolívar in South America and Miguel Hidalgo in Mexico led movements that eventually freed much of Latin America from Spanish and Portuguese rule. The exploration and colonization of the Americas left a lasting legacy that continues to shape the world today. European languages, religions, and cultures became dominant in the Americas, and the boundaries established during the colonial period still define the nations of the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, the exploitation of indigenous peoples, the transatlantic slave trade, and the environmental impact of colonization had long-lasting consequences for the Americas. The blending of European, African, and indigenous cultures created the rich, diverse societies that exist in the Americas today, but the history of colonization remains a painful chapter for many. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel before you go. Thank you for watching.